So when you take the SAT, one of the rules that I want you to have stuck in your head is this idea of let parallel structure rule. On several of the questions on the practice tests that I've seen and on the SAT itself, there are questions that require you to kind of understand the concept of parallel structure in its many forms. The purpose of this video in particular is to show you what parallel structure actually looks like in language. We'll do further videos that address, like, well, how do you make something parallel? Or how do you approach a question in which they're asking you to put things into similar patterns? And we'll address that here shortly. But let's start with what is parallel structure. Parallel structure refers to the strategic construction of sentences in similar patterns. And this refers to like the verb tense, word order, punctuation, word choice, and then sometimes the rhythm and cadence of the sentence itself. Like sometimes it has a sonic quality to the sentence. So I want to address some examples from some famous works of literature and historical documents that illustrate what parallel structure looks like. The first example here, and I'm actually going to zoom in a bit, that would make this a lot easier to read, is this is an excerpt of Dr. King's letter from Birmingham jail. In addition to being one of the most important world and U.S. historical documents, it's also one of the most beautifully written, especially when you evaluate it for its rhetorical structures and parallel structure for that matter. But in this paragraph, he says, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. So when I approach this, one of the things that you'll notice is injustice and justice are repeated within the same sentence. Another thing that is paired up within the sentence is anywhere, along with the contrasting pronoun everywhere. So injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. This type of parallel structure in which opposites and comparisons and contrasts are being made is specifically known as anti-metaboly. But in this case, we're just learning about parallel structure. The second sentence continues to be parallel, and we'll talk about how. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. So looking at this, the first part of the sentence ends with a metaphor, comparison of two unlike things, mutuality as in a network, and then another metaphor here, garment of destiny. But what's more important here is for the parallel structure is the pause that is featured right here in the middle of the sentence. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Following along then to the next sentence, whatever affects one directly, pause, affects all indirectly. So one sentence to the next is parallel to one another. Furthermore, he follows up with this pattern of parallel structure with regard to words in the sentence itself. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. So one versus all, and directly versus indirectly. Then you follow along with the next sentence. Never again can we afford to live with the narrow, provincial, offside agitator idea. So this is just a really good example of parallel structure done within sentences and from one sentence to the next. In other words, it was strategically constructed so that there were similar patterns with how the words were said, how they sounded, and how they compared and contrasted one another. And a similar example here comes from Julius Caesar by William Shakespeare. This is actually the speech that Brutus gives before Mark Antonius' speech. And he gets to this point. And if there be anybody in this assembly, any dear friend of Caesar's, I say to him that Brutus's love to Caesar was no less than his. And if then that friend demand why Brutus rose against Caesar, this is my answer. And this is where the parallel structure begins. Not that I loved Caesar less, but I loved Rome more. Notice the strategic choice and rhythm of what they have here. Not that I loved Caesar less, but that I loved Rome more. Have Caesar were living and die all slaves. Once again, compare and contrast. Then that Caesar were dead to live all free men. But notice there's like a rhythm to how the sentence is done and also how you compare to the contrast. Compare to the contrast. And then repetition is usually a part of parallel structure, and you'll see it here. As, as. As Caesar loved me, I weep for him. Pause. As he was fortunate, I rejoice at it. As he was valiant, pause, I honor him. But as he was ambitious, I slew him. And even through the end of the piece, until he gets to this part where he starts using the old classic, if you're against me, you must be against Rome kind of line of reasoning. So there is tears for his joy, love for his fortune, honor for his valor, and death for his ambition. All of those are a perfect example of the strategic use of parallel structure in order to repeat and to compare and contrast and to prove a specific point. So that is what parallel structure looks like. But on the SAT, it might look slightly different, and we're going to talk about that in a future video. Thank you.